Hello, dear ones. Today I wanted to get into the energy, the energetics, what is shifting in our body during the autumn equinox and into the season of autumn. So, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, autumn is around the corner, autumn is here. It is time for us to really utilize and learn how to use our lungs well. And so, in the five element theory of Chinese medicine or Taoism, autumn governs the lungs. And so it's when the lungs come into their full expression. And if you're new to this information, or if you kind of have like little bits of information about it, I'll just give you a little refresher or, share with you that the way that these five elements work is the energy of the atmosphere influences specific organ systems within our body that almost give us like a little opportunity to get into that organ system and potentiate it, so support its health. And in springtime, it starts with our liver, which is our vision, which is the aspect of our consciousness that really like plans and aspires, and it's more ethereal. And so the liver is really that which makes plans and decisions, and it's paired with the gallbladder. So it has its expression in spring, its energy is shooting up, and the atmosphere that pervades in spring is wind. In the summertime, it is the heart and the small intestine. So the heart is this full expansion, its element is fire. And so it is that fullness of spring shooting up where it expands in summer. Now, these are the yang seasons, the more masculine outward seasons, spring and summer. And so in summer, the heart it's the Shen. This is the aspect of our consciousness that is connected into the cosmos or the heavens, whatever you would like to call it. That really is what we're streaming for our soul's path. And so many of us can fall off of our soul's path just by, coming into a society that's rather indoctrinated. And so, when we're really clear with our reception with our heart, which is another really ethereal aspect of our consciousness that works with the liver, we receive these messages from the heavens, and then the liver plans and aspires and has the vision through the eyes in which to go forward. And so our heart is also connected to our tongue. It's our speech, and it's how we are really communicating this path to our community, the people around us. So it's our message. And then in late summer, this is the flip. This is where yang shifts to yin, where the outward seasons turn to the inward seasons, where the more masculine seasons shift to the more feminine seasons. And in late summer, the spleen is activated. And now also the spleen is activated 18 days before every seasonal shift. So the equinoxes and the solstices, the spleen will come online. And the spleen's energy kind of just like disrupts everything so that the next energy can take place. And so the spleen has this aspect where it lifts up the things that need to be lifted up, and it pushes down the things that are no longer needed. So the spleen, you can think of it as like, it has discernment. And unlike the kidneys, which are our postnatal chi, which is what we come in with, the spleen is our prenatal chi, the spleen is our postnatal chi. So it's actually the earth element, and it's that which we take in from the earths, whether it's food, whether it's water, whether it's information. This is influencing the functioning of our spleen, which is linked to our mind. And so the spleen and the mind work together. It's how we chew, ponder, masticate, exercise good judgment. When we overchew thoughts, we overchew our muscles, parts of our body get dense. And so our muscles are also linked with our spleen. And so the spleen's aspect of consciousness is really focus, right? Taking the message it received and the dreams and aspirations and then focusing. So unwavering focus. And so when we have spleen issues, it'll be like brain fog, fatigue, flat arches, not being able to get up in the morning, like all this kind of stuff. The spleen is really revealed in the arches of the feet. And so as we keep moving, we are now in autumn. This is the first yin season, the first feminine season that contracts. And so in nature, right, the seeds sprout up, they expand and open to the fruits, the flower and then the fruit. And then in the fruit is the seed, and that dries in autumn through the drying nature of the element of autumn, it dries. And then in winter, the seeds descend down into the earth to hibernate. And so the lungs and the large intestine are paired in autumn. This dryness pulls within. And so when we can utilize our breath well, it is really how we're like filtering our grief and our sadness, because that's the emotions that the lungs carry. It's the aspect of consciousness known as the Po. And so it's that which has like the biggest, the lungs are most impacted by the three-dimensional physical reality through the experiences the human has with the people around it. So this is where the grief and the sadness comes in. And so in its virtue, the lungs are courage. It's the courage to, move through that grief and sadness and then still be having a sensory experience with the world, because the Po governs our five senses, because the five senses are that which are really linked to this physical world. And so the lungs and the kidneys, the Po and then the kidneys are the Z, these are the most like tangible aspects of our consciousness. They're not so much ethereal, right, as the liver, the Han, and the Shen, the heart. The Yi, the spleen, brings it down, and then as we anchor it into the Po, which is having a relationship with the world. And the Z, the kidneys, this is the willpower. And so the kidneys descend down. It's the element of water. It is winter. It is when we go deep. It is when we go into our cave and have our insights. It's when we slow down our breath, so we're hibernating. And so the kidneys, their emotion is fear, like not fearing or not feeling physically safe in the body. So fearing the outer world or fearing the inner world, or not feeling like, the body feels safe just to be. And so the kidneys are really the aspect of our consciousness that like has the willpower. So our kidneys are our feet, right? It's stepping out into the world with all of these other aspects of our consciousness, our vision, our mission on the planet, the ability for us to engage with the planet with our physical senses, to have the focus to fulfill our mission. The kidneys, the legs, we step out into the world with that. And so when we're playing with these 5 elements, it is having an expression in each season. And so I really did want to do like a little bit of a deep dive into the lungs today, because this is the organ that is awakened in autumn. So autumn, if you kind of pay attention to nature, what is happening when the sun is traversing the sky is that in spring and autumn, there's a quickening, there's an acceleration happening. And so because the earth doesn't revolve the sun in a perfect circle, there's an angle, there's a differentiation in light on the different nodes, or these polarities. So there's a polarity of spring and autumn, there's a polarity of summer and winter. Now the polarity of summer and winter is this pause. And so in winter, it's a pause of darkness. In summer, it's a pause of light, it's the fullness. But sun doesn't really change too much during these 2 times because of the way that the earth goes around the sun. So the angle isn't as intense. And so when we're in spring and autumn, in autumn especially, right, we're getting less and less light quickly. So you'll notice in autumn that like quickly the sun is going down. And so this creates a certain energy in the body. In springtime, as quickly and quickly there's more light and more light and more light, we have more time to do things. So we start to go out more. We start to get excited. We do our projects. We put more things into our day simply because there's more light in the day for us to take advantage of, right? And so it's really creature nature. It's knowing that like before we had artificial lighting, like when spring began this acceleration, all creatures were going out, all humans were going out and thinking, oh my gosh, I have so much more time today, more time today, more time today. And so there was this urgency to get out there, to get planting, to get moving, to get doing. But in autumn, the reverse is happening. There's now an urgency to go within. Quickly, light is shutting down, right? Quickly, the sun is moving across the sky. Faster and faster, the sun is setting earlier and earlier. And so in the body, this feeling is, I have to gather. I have to go harvest. I have to bring things into my home. I have to preserve. I have to dry food. I have to get ready for the cold, dark winter. And so this urgency is given to us. It's given to nature. It's given to creatures so that the creatures know like, oh, it's time. It is time to get ready, because in winter, there's no food. In winter, everything is in dormancy. In winter, everything goes below the ground and rests and is in hibernation and is not wasting its energy being out in the world trying to look for food, and there's no food available. And so the Taoists say, who are we to go against the 10,000 laws of nature? If we do, our health perishes. And this is why so many of us in our society get sick or have chronic health issues, really because we are not aligned to these energies. In winter, we're still working the same amount as we are in summer, and it doesn't make any sense because that's not how we support our body. And so yes, 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 some of us have jobs, some of us have to live like this, some of us have to work like this. If that's the story that you are holding, yes, okay, there are ways in which we can really begin to shift our energies so that we can still cultivate these aspects of ourself that are so inherent within our being. And so in autumn, the obedience, which is the obligation, the duty of the energetic influences that are raining down on us, it is to start to go within. It is to start to like have the foods that are like kind of like squeezing out the last of summer, any of the mucus in the body, pulling it out, right? Those like pungent or astringent foods. And so any like that heat and the expansion of summer, as that flips to the contraction, if there's any like mucus or phlegminess or like, stuff of the spleen is like the stagnancy. That stagnancy will get stuck and then it will come through as like lung issues, respiratory issues. And so in autumn, it's so important to learn how to do breath work, to learn how to manipulate the breath, right? And that's why I have my virtual yoga studio. And that's why, I put up practices every single week. So you either have a yoga practice or a breath work practice so that you can actually potentiate your breath. And I also have a breath work course because in autumn, it's really important to know how to utilize the lungs well. And so for many of us, when we're going about our day unconscious, if we're not paying attention to our breath, which many of us don't, because thank God it's happening without us thinking about it, we tend to breathe really shallow. So just like into the upper portion of the lungs, or like, we're not taking advantage of the full expression of the lungs. And so when we can begin to take advantage of the full expression of the lungs, it is through training. It is through understanding breathwork techniques that we can begin to, use rapid breathing to like expel the stuff in our lungs that needs to be expelled, to expand and do breath retentions that hold in the fullness of our lungs and actually press our lungs to the edges. So the deeper breaths we take, the bigger the lungs get, the more that we open up like these little villi in the lungs that often don't get any fresh oxygen. And so the more we can exhale all of our air out and push, right, the stellar carbon dioxide that's sitting at the bottom of our lungs out, and then we take those big breaths in, we are filtering, we are refreshing our lungs and our body with this oxygen. And so I know for me and many of the people that I work with, when a breathwork practice is implemented, even like 3 to 4 times a week, not even every day, though I do it every day, you have so much more energy and you need so much less food or, just even things of the outside world, because you feel so filled up from within, because you are nourishing your body with the prana, the air, the ions, the ores, the minerals of the atmosphere that you don't just get by hardly breathing. You get it by learning how to use the sift and the filter of your thyroid gland to pull it into your lungs and learn how to use your lungs well. And so breathwork is one of the most important things that you can implement in autumn. Another thing you can implement in your yoga practice or in your physical movement practice is twisting, turning the lungs, right? Just opening them up, doing these side stretches that really allow the fullness of the lungs to open so that you have more room for air. And so the lungs feed the kidneys. The lungs in the 5-element cycle, since they come before the kidneys, they're the mother of the kidneys. And so the better we can nourish our lungs, which is the one organ we can access via the breath, the more we can tap into the kidneys, which is our ancestry, which is the conditioning. It's where we came from. It's, it's our bones, it's our head hair, it's our teeth. And so when our kidneys are not nourished, we'll see things showing up in the hair. We'll break our bones easier. We will have our teeth like cracking and breaking or falling out, or we'll have teeth issues. And so, when they want to look at the health of a horse, the first thing they do is look at the teeth. And if the teeth are falling out, they know that the horse isn't well. And so kidneys are one organ that you really want to learn how to support, because the way that the kidneys work is it's like our batteries. We're given one charge. And so a lot of people will live their life fast and hard, and then they will have no life force or vitality or ojas left for the end of their life because they partied so hard at the beginning of their life. And so if we have a very specific amount of life force and timing in which we can accomplish what our soul came here to do, and we waste it all in the first bit of our life, then we don't get to our destination, and we have to come back into the planet and be incarnated and learn all these lessons again and again and again until we choose differently, right? But when we can really harness our vitality, when we can learn to regulate our energy, when we learn how to put our energy in the right places, when we learn how to leverage the body well, so we're not just wasting energy using muscles when we don't need to be using muscles, like using all of our muscles when we're standing when we don't need to. Like, this is how we start to support our soul's mission to get to where it's headed, because we're not now wasting our energy. We're not wasting, right, the time that we have on this earth. We're learning how to use time constructively, and that is the only purpose of time, is to learn how to use it well. And so when we're working with this practice in autumn, some of the energetic principles I like to bring in are seeds, like actually eating seeds once in a while. So whether it's sesame seeds, whether it is poppy seeds, whether it is sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, these are all the seeds that become available in autumn. And so those seeds are what are giving us the nourishment, the medicine that we need in autumn. So just like in spring, we're eating like the fresh sprouts, the fresh greens, the new growth of the plants are so tender, just like an infant is, because they're in the spring of their life, right? And in summer, the medicine is of flowers. And in the late summer, it's the fruits. Autumn, it's the seed. And winter, it's the roots. And so it's because the energy is moving to different parts of the plant in different seasons. And so you're getting like the epitome and the full potentiation of the plant when you are, right, taking that part of the plant that is in its full expression. When we learn to look at nature, we really learn how to see where energy is moving. And so that contraction that brings us in autumn, that dryness that brings us in, is for a reason, right? It's curing the seeds so that there's there's the potentiation, the potential of spring growth. And so we gather seeds in autumn. And so when we do just little things in our life like this, preserve a little bit of food, dry a little bit of food in autumn, harvest some things, bring some things into our house, so our body feels safe for winter, which is the kidneys, right? We can really add this layer of seasonal living into our lives, even if we do have to have a 9-to-5 job in winter, right? And so we're always just looking for ways to balance our life in the modern day world in more of a natural way so that we can support the inner processes of the body. And autumn is a beautiful time to do this. It is a time not when we're supposed to be out and doing a whole bunch of things, right? That's what spring and summer is for. That is the outward seasons when we're in community, when we're relating, when we're in relationship. But autumn pulls us back inside of our homes. It asks that we clear our homes, we get the dust out of our homes, we open the windows, we get a breeze through, right? This is what we're doing in our bodies. We're using our body as our home where we're cleaning and we're sweeping. And when we do the breathwork practice, we're just sweeping the lungs so that they're fresh and clean for winter when we start to go deep, right? And so another thing to know is that every time we move through these organs in this 5-element cycle, when we leave the season that the organ was in its expression, then that organ goes to it's like the hardest to work with it. So if we're in autumn and we just left the season of the spleen of late summer, it's hardest to work with your spleen in autumn because it had already happened. And so just like the sine wave in nature that is in everything, the rise and the fall, this is what the organs are doing in the seasons. And so the midpoint of autumn, which is Samayan, or if in the modern day world calls it Halloween, right? Trick or treat or whatever. But in Samayan, this is the peak of the lungs. And then it starts falling because it gives birth to the kidneys that then rise, right? That the kidneys take over in the winter solstice. And the peak is in Imbolc, right? And then it falls. And so these 8 quadrants of the seasons are also the seasonal wheel that the pagans used, right? And so all of these like metaphors and imagery and the alchemical symbols, like these are overlaid everywhere because these people were looking at nature. They were looking at the eternal truth that they could perceive outside of themselves that was also reflected inside of themselves. And so that's why in spring, it's the infancy. In summer, it's the fullness. It's when you're working. It's when you're, in your reproductive years. It's when there's so many demands in your life. You're doing it all, right? And then in autumn, it's your elder years, right? It's when you're withdrawing and going within. And winter's the in-between. It's when your soul leaves the physical body and perhaps will roam until it inhabits another physical body in the next spring. And so when we interlay all of these aspects, you get to start to play with your own energy. So if you're in the summer of your life and it's autumn, that's the seasonal year of autumn. So there is this withdrawing, but you're still in the summer of your life. So there is still more parts of you outside. If you're in the autumn of your life and it's autumn, it's really potent. It has a depth to it because it's layered on top of each other, right? And that's why if you're in the summer of your life and it's summer, it's a lot. There's a lot being demanded out of you. It's like the kids, it's like the work, it's the house, it's, all the people around you. And so we just learn to move through with practices, the seasons of our life well, the seasons of the year well. We learn to see these fractal pieces in everything that's going on around us. And so if there's seasons on Earth, there's larger seasons that we can't see that is of Earth, the entity of Earth, right? The matrix of Earth. And so just like you're a solar system of yourself, the Earth is its own solar system. Our solar system is like a vaster solar system, which is a small solar system of a bigger solar system. And so when we can fractal these like little pieces out and start to see these patterns, this is when we get true knowledge and understanding because we see this reflection in all things. And this is where, it's like the metaphysics or the science of today was the metaphysics of yesterday. Like nothing is ever set in stone. The science of today will eventually become irrelevant as new science is being adopted from the metaphysics that we're discovering today. And so it's always just this art of constant motion. You are in constant motion. The seasons are in constant motion. There's constantly energy moving throughout your body. But can you pierce the veil and see what is truly going on around you so that you can eventually become an active participant in it? Right? And that's what it is. It's when you become an active participant in it, you become conscious in it. You become awake and aware in it. And then you can begin to support your body the way it needs to be supported, right? You can begin to, align yourself when you know you're getting misaligned. You can know where your center is. So the moment you're off center, you have tools to go back to center. And this is what the yoga practice is, the breathwork practice is. It's finding out true center in your body. Because when you're centered in your body, you're organized, you're aligned. And since everything is a fractal or a microcosm or a reflection or a pattern, when you are aligned, right, everything around you is aligned. Everything comes into more alignment. And so that is why, when we use the body in this way, it's a communication tool for our mind. It is like the root, right, of the mind that is the mind of all things. And so our body is simply showing us where we are in time and space. And so if it's a season that we are in time and space, how are you going to use it to your advantage? What are the little things you're going to do that nature's already doing, right? How are you going to potentiate your health so that in winter you have the tools to stay healthy? And even if you don't, you have the tools to get over it quickly. And so when we do not align with these rhythms, we get sick and we stay sick. Right? This is where chronic illness comes from, because we don't know how to find our way out, because we are simply living in a linear dimension of time that says there's 24 hours in the day. I have to do this and this all the time, every single day in the same measure. And that's not what life is. Life is dynamic change. The sun is changing its positioning, right? The moon is changing its positioning. And so there's these layers and layers and layers of energies that when we can align to and understand, we can begin to get like the juice, the energy, the sustenance out of life. And so from this period, from when the sun is descending from the summer solstice all the way to the winter solstice is when the sun is in decline. Every time the moon is waning or also declining from full to new, we are going to hold a lot of depths. It's going to really pull us down. It's going to feel so hard to get out and to get moving the same way you do every single day, because it's simply not what is being asked of you. What is being asked of you, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper as we spiral into the darkness of the darkest day of the year on the winter solstice, it's that you are drawn within. And so when the moon is almost new and it's the winter solstice, that's a big moment of pause. That's a big moment of depths. That's like really gathering it all within you and just being there in the darkness and the emptiness, right? And so it's really hard to go out and think that you can do all this stuff at that moment because the energy is just not there. It's just not meant to be there. But alternatively, every time the moon is getting bigger in this time frame, from the summer solstice to the winter solstice, it's like a little pop. You just get like a little zest. You get a little bit of the moon's energy, just like lifting you up a little bit. And so there's a beautiful balance rather than a potentiation pulling you, right? And then so it's the reverse. When the sun is growing bigger from the winter solstice to the summer solstice, getting more and more and more sunlight until you get into like the fullness of the longest day of the year. Every time the moon is getting bigger, it's gonna be just pulling out. Everything's pulling out. And that's why you plant your seeds in spring, because they're all the sunlight saying, wake up. And then the moonlight is getting bigger and bigger, so they don't really have time to sleep at night. And so then all the seeds sprout, because that's the obedience and the obligation of them is it's getting warmer, it's getting sunnier. The moon is not letting me sleep at night. I must sprout, right? And then every time that moon draws down, it draws the roots down, it gets smaller and it starts waning. There's a balance, because as the sun is increasing and the moon is waning, you get a reprieve rather than the fullness bringing you out, like the insanity of summer and the full moon, like total craziness, right? You get that balance. And so the alchemists were doing this all the time. They were paying attention to what the moon was doing, the season was doing, the season of the life was doing, how to find the elixir of life, which is really cultivating their practices so that they can have longevity. And they cultivated their health so that they wanted longevity, because if they didn't feel good, they weren't going to want to be in their body, because they knew they needed enough time to get to their destination, right? Which is fulfilling the soul's mission so that there's nothing pulling you back to the planet to incarnate and to have to learn all these lessons again and again and again, repeating them, repeating the cause and the effect of the energy that is still tethering you to this dimension, right? And so autumn is such a good time to let go. That's the obedience of autumn, is letting go. And that's what the large intestine is. And that's paired with the lungs. It's letting go of the grief and the sadness, moving through the grief and the sadness so that you can have the courage to move into the dark winter with the practices that you hold that will get you through anything, right? I think it's Siddhartha. He said, I know how to think, I know how to wait, and I know how to pray. And so it's really cultivating the human in such a way every day that you're using your time constructively, that you know exactly what you need to be doing in every moment to support your health and your vitality, that you know how to feel in your body what feels good and what doesn't feel good, because you're the only one that has to live inside of your body. And so when you can live inside of your body well and you can start to listen to yourself better, it changes the game, because now all of a sudden, where there was once dissonance, there's consonance. Where the tone was off, now it's harmony. Now you really start to see the effects of your new reality, the new choices that you're making. Your whole world starts shifting. The whole dimension starts changing, because how could it not? The moment your thoughts shift, the world shifts. And so in autumn, the breath allows us to let go. Learning how to use the breathwork practices allows us to really open ourselves up as the empty container, as autumn is the element of metal, the container, the vessel that can eventually hold the deep waters of winter, that wisdom, that clarity, those underground root systems, the ancestry, the conditioning that we eventually get to work through in winter, right? From the reflections that we had in autumn, of the reflections of the memories of spring. And so that way, when we come into spring after winter, we have the evolution, we have the revelation, right? It is being able to see that through that cycle, we've evolved. We've made different choices. We've noticed how our garden's a little bit different, which seeds did really well. And we can start to have a different kind of relationship of evolution, of constant growth, of constant expansion, because that's all the universe is. It is continuous expansion. And that's what we're putting ourselves into, is this field of expansion, right? And so autumn brings us back within so that we can gather, right? So that we can gather and truly understand. So in winter, we can be that deep well, that we can be with ourselves in harmony, in peace, in understanding, and know how to come into spring, right? And so I just wanted to share with you a few of my favorite autumn practices, a few of my favorite ways that I interact and interpret autumn, so that when you come into autumn, you can have a little ceremony, a little reverence for yourself of all of the things that you did this year, of all of the things that, you would change, the reflections, right? Like, what are you going to do different next year? And so autumn is just such a great time to almost like have like a process where you are truly reflecting the differences through time, right? The difference through each spring season. And so the seasonal practice never ends. It is always going to show you in this upward spiral, ideally moving through time, using your time constructively, and showing you every single spring what's different. Every single year, how you've evolved, how things have shifted, how your life has shifted, because you don't want each year to come into it the same. You don't want to be the same person, right? That's boring. You want to be new. You want to be reinvented. You want to be really following the calling of your soul, because that is what you're here for. So I hope you enjoy your autumn. If you do want to join either the breathwork course, I'll link it below, or the virtual yoga studio, so you can have practices all the time and have like my help Q&A and all that kind of stuff. I'll also link that below. But I hope you have a beautiful autumn. I hope that you really enjoy this time and use it to go inside of yourself and really start to understand these deeper underpinnings of your soul. So thank you for listening.